Okay, folks. Apologies for the delay. Appreciate your patience. Thanks, Emily. Appreciate it. Sorry, no, don't apologize. I'm sorry you feel poorly. Much appreciated. So we'll go ahead and get started again. Sorry for the delay. For the Tuesday, December 9th, 2025, meeting the New London Planning Board. We are going to talk zoning, as most of you all know or should know. And Adam's going to jump in. We're going to sort of change the order of flow a little bit here, but you'll see. Just bear with us.
All right, so that we can try and let Lauren and Lisa go before it's too late, we'll just change it up a little bit and start with the institutional if people are okay with that. So I think most everyone in this room has probably sat through the spiel of the institutional every Friday morning for the last 6 weeks, so I will try to save you too much detail. But essentially the idea behind it was to allow for some modest flexibility in the institutional college and an institutional hospital to allow for potential housing in those zones, and then also to make sure that there were accommodations for child and adult care in those particular zones. With the, oops, and I'm realizing that this copy did not strike through. I think that was a different spot where Lori had talked to us about the state is no longer licensing all operations under medical care, like doctor's offices and things. So when it gets time to take that motion, we will take it with the condition that the license be struck from the draft, and then we will make that correction. But essentially that is the gist of it. By doing that, we have allowed multifamily structures up to 45 feet at the hospital institutional, and we have included a buffer of 75 feet from Parkside and the adjacent residential zones for structures to get them a little bit more buffering from the neighbors. This includes rezoning the parcel that was formerly the continuum parcel. And then similarly on the college parcel, we don't have the issue of the additional buffering, but are allowing 45 feet for the height regulation of multifamily, 35 sustains under family, single and two family, and allowing non-residential, so they're academic buildings or anything non-residential that supports the college, up to 55 feet, which is similar to the new nursing building size. So that is the high level. So I think this is a PDF, so I will change it in hard copy, and then so if you are so inclined at some point to make a motion, it would be a motion to move this forward to first public hearing on January 13th at 6:30 p.m. at Whipple Hall, with the correction that the word license be struck from the phrase licensed medical facility.
And then the other non-material, like little edits, tweaks, grammar things that's all fine, right? There's nothing
Right,
material.
we did, and Bob had, wait, I printed this, maybe Bob can point us to the exact spot, but sent a request to change a comma to a semicolon.
Yeah,
So
and I've got that too.
we will certainly do that. Oh, you deserve the credit.
Yeah, there's no shame in that. That's all prop. Yeah, I have some ideas on that.
Okay.
35 feet thing, so we can do that.
Okay.
Cool. So is there any discussion from the board on this, any of these changes, for the few people we have here? Any questions from the public on this one before we ask for a motion to move this to the January meeting? Okay. So seeing none, I then just need a motion from the board to, so Emily motions, I need a second. Okay, Charlene seconds, thank you. So then, all in favor of moving this to public hearing in January? Say aye. Aye. Great, thanks, everybody.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so let me just pull open. So we'll get back in line here on accessory dwelling unit. So we did receive a couple of comments from folks in the public. We shared Steve's with you last Friday morning. And then we have a couple of things from Rich Epstein. And so for most of the things that Steve or Rich suggested, though we haven't changed the official copy that's on the agenda tonight, I did change a Word document copy that you can see up on the screen, so that if we were inclined to adopt those, the work is hopefully mostly done. So here are copies of Rich's. Thank you. Can you slide that down too? So just to summarize, Rich Epstein says, hi, Adam and Tim. I'm not able to attend tomorrow's planning board meeting, and I thought I heard you will go over the ADU document. I believe the following 2 additional updates are non-controversial. Number 1, there was consensus for previous warrant article to not allow short-term rentals. Number 2, restrict ADUs from being built with manufactured housing or townhouse-styled units. Yes, parenthetical, yes, I know we can't restrict someone from using a manufactured home as an ADU, although we already restrict manufactured homes in the R1. And he says, I'm not a lawyer, but I know a lawyer put the following information in the guidelines. Just in case there is anything that should be considered, the municipality may require an owner occupancy of one of the units. If it does this, the municipality should consider what it means by owner. Does the owner need to be a physical person, or can it be one member of an LLC that owns the property, a beneficiary of a revocable trust that owns the property, or 3, a person with an interest in another legal entity, example, a partnership or corporation that owns the property? Thanks, Rich. So keep in mind, if anybody wants copies of that, they are up here. Steve, is it okay if I sort of go through this, kind of calling out the different suggestions that were made, and if I didn't capture them accurately, just sort of flag? Does that work? Sorry, I will zoom in as much as I can, and I will. Okay. So let me just grab. I guess before we jump in there, on the topic of riches, and I think this was also in Steve's, the short-term rental, the question of the short-term rental. I think you. I was thinking you brought up the question of restricting short-term rental as well, but maybe that was just Rich. Okay, so just so that everyone is aware, I went back and looked at this again and referred to the guidance from the New Hampshire Municipal Association, which discusses that any municipal regulation applicable to single-family dwellings shall also apply to the combination of a principal dwelling unit and an accessory dwelling unit, included but not limited to, and then it gives some examples. Short-term rental isn't one of them, but the not limited to suggests that there are others, and said, provided that such municipal regulation shall not be more restrictive for accessory dwelling units than for any single-family use in the same zoning district. So I don't believe we can restrict the short-term rental in this round, whereas 2 years ago when we had that conversation, this was not a part of the statute at that point. Because we don't have an existing short-term rental regulation in our zoning ordinance, I don't think we actually can on the accessory dwelling unit. So just to sort of answer that part of Rich's. The second part, the restriction of the townhouse and manufactured, it is in here. I brought that in. But the way that the law is now written, it no longer includes manufactured homes. It calls them multifamily uses, and then gives the example of townhomes. So I think we have to work within those confines. It doesn't call out specifically manufactured homes anymore. But that sort of gives you the synopsis on Rich's, which will hit the spots where that changed, along with some of the spots that Steve suggested. So if we are starting under the definition section, The suggestion was made to match the definition in our ordinance to the definition of the RSA. And so that includes the strike through, I forget that this is a touchscreen, the strike through there that you see within or attached to, and adds the red and underlined so that it would read a residential living unit that is located on a lot containing a single family dwelling that provides independent living facilities for one or more persons, including provisions for sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation on the same parcel of land as the principal dwelling unit it accompanies. This last line, Steve, you didn't include, but it is part of the definition on there, so I added it. The accessory dwelling unit may be constructed at the same time as the principal dwelling unit so that it can all happen through one building permit process. We don't have to wait until they have a primary to permit the accessory. Thank you.
Adam?
Wait, where, I'm sorry, Steve, real quick. Where are you? Yep, thank you.
We were just chatting over that. I think we all had the same question. Can you provide a definition of a manufactured home? Because I think most folks think of it as really only thinking about it in a mobile home. Is that true? Are there other
Yes.
housing?
It's HUD, the Housing
Yep.
and Urban Development, comes up with the definition, and it's based on the existence of a chassis that is not removable.
Okay.
And so there's a very technical
Yeah.
aspect to that, but that is essentially the difference. And then you get into modular or pre-site build,
Yes.
which they also define.
Is
and then-
modular considered manufactured?
No.
Separate?
So
Okay.
we have the definition built in ours too.
Yep.
That reads, any structure transportable in one or more sections, which in the traveling mode is 8 body feet or more in width and 40 body feet or more in length, or when erected on site is 320 square feet or more, and which is built on a permanent chassis and designed to be used as a dwelling with or without a permanent foundation when connected to required utilities, which include plumbing, heating, and electrical heating systems contained therein. And then it goes into floodplain management as a different definition.
Sure.
But
Thank you.
yep.
Question.
Yep.
Where you just added an S to units, shouldn't the principal dwelling unit be units also? Because it suggests that, it sort of implies that you may have more than one accessory dwelling unit.
We could also say an accessory dwelling unit may be constructed at the same time as the principal dwelling unit, just to make sure it's clear that we're not allowing 2 ADUs.
Yep.
Does that work?
That's better. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Rearranged the draft that you see in front of you that we've been working on includes the restriction on the an ADU may not occupy rented or leased land as a standalone condition, but moved it into this E2. I'm missing my actual copy. Any thoughts on that, or are we set? Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. You guys.
So Steve, you had the question on the reference to Article 20B. I shared your question in that I see this as kind of superfluous and not necessary, and I do sometimes worry about referencing other articles that could change in other areas. There was discussion at the time because the law now requires you to allow legally non-conforming structures be converted to ADUs, wanting to make it clear that the applicable step backs apply to new construction in addition, as in compliance with the legal non-conforming structures section of Article 20. So that stands whether this site is there or not, because that's a part of the zoning ordinance. The morning that we were having that conversation, it felt like it was the I think it was Paul Vance's point, if I remember correctly, that having it there directed people to the section that they needed to comply with.
So I looked at it again, and I realized what you were trying to do there. As a matter of drafting, what threw me off is every ADU supposed to now comply with 20B? Obviously not, only those that are in the shoreline buffer zone. As a draftsperson, I would have said subject to Article 20B, so that as opposed to in compliance with, it's a very subtle change, but it eliminates the notion that any new construction now is subject to some restrictions that are in 20B. So pretty, I mean, it's more important than maybe a semicolon, but not very important.
Shall be met for new construction or additions, subject to compliance with Article 20B, you're
Yeah,
saying?
that's how I would draft it.
Okay,
after
that makes sense.
40 years of doing this stuff.
Yeah,
Thanks.
appreciate that. Thank you.
And this next one, thank you for catching this, because we've had to make an interpretation all these years on this, and I'm sorry that we didn't have this conversation before, but adding in of total living space after the 1,000 square feet. And perhaps, so Steve, the one thing I didn't incorporate in here because I thought it was more conversation than I could count on predicting is the square footage limit. So maybe now is the time to bring that question forward, just because we're on that, if you want to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was pretty much close to the issues 2 years ago that resulted in a proposal for detached ADUs to be voted down. And two of the issues that were, I thought, most telling, most prominent were, one, a fear that this would promote house trailers, manufactured housing, double wides, and also in the wealthier waterfront shoreland overlay districts, you would get development that would not be attainable housing, affordable housing. It would be just more of a burden on our lakes. And so my suggestion to add here is to limit the square footage to the minimum required by the statute of 750 square feet. So there's two ideas. One is for any manufactured housing, and separately for shoreline overlay district proposals. As I say, it was a 2-to-1 vote 2 years ago against detached ADUs, and so I think to be able to say that to the voters that you're only doing the minimum required in those sensitive areas would help you with the voters.
Steve, are you suggesting that even attached would be dropped down from 1,000 to 750?
No.
So just detached?
Nor am I suggesting that detached and I'm using those terms in the way we understand them, not the way they're in the statute, but detached other than in the shoreland overlay district and other than manufactured housing could be 1,000 square feet. So now you could decide, there's another alternative here I'll throw out, and that is you could just say anything that is a detached ADU, our understanding should be 750 square feet, and then separately, and then you can say, we're only doing the bare minimum, but we separately think some or all of it should be 1,000 square feet. You could give that to the voters as a separate proposal, and then you would see what they feel like, if you follow me. So it might be a selling point to say, okay, voters didn't want detached ADUs, legislature now requires it, we're doing the minimum, but we think maybe we should do more than minimum on square footage and let the voters decide.
Thanks, Steve. Thoughts from the board?
I've got to think about that. I'm not sure. What do you think?
I think if we were going to create categories, there may be more comfort in creating an attached category and a detached category, and not necessarily providing some sort of more protection to shorefront owners versus non-shorefront owners. that it would be a more blanket. If you choose to limit detached, it's detached at 750 everywhere in town. Might be cleaner, and if that were the path you wanted to go, it would be more equitable for folks. That, it doesn't look like we are trying to protect people who perhaps live in higher price areas, because I think we have had that concern brought up in some of the Housing Commission forums that we heard, that I think people felt like there were more protections provided for people who happen to live adjacent to environmentally sensitive areas, but then that also happens to be a particular type of residence typically. So I think you could provide more equity there if that's what you chose. As far as attached, I think we've never gotten any pushback from a neighbor in a meeting or anything about 1,000, so I think they're comfortable with that maintaining at a minimum.
So what I heard Steve mention was the sensitivity to the lakes, to water quality issues, not, which is also the way I think about it, versus favoring homeowners who live on the lake. I think it's more important to think about it environmentally, at least that's the way I do. I wasn't involved on this board 2 years ago, so I wasn't paying as much attention to it in terms of what the voters' pushback was.
It wouldn't change the overall percentage of impervious area that a property is allowed to have in the shoreland. It would change the formula in which they could utilize to reach their maximum, because it may mean that they had 250 more square feet that they could dedicate to the primary residence, or exterior decks or walkways or driveway, whatever it may be, but it would constrain the interior living space. Ultimately, too, the 2 bedrooms would still be there, so the septic would be the same size and same utilization, I believe.
To Rich Epstein's point, I think that detached ADUs in the Shoreland Overlay District would be more prone to being short-term rentals. And certainly, and the point I've made all along is that the idea behind detached ADUs is affordable housing, attainable housing, useful housing of a sort that we don't have much of. In the Shoreland Overlay District, I don't see much of that happening. I think you're going to get carriage houses and just more development of already heavily developed areas in our town that impact our lakes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was just looking up some stuff. Any thoughts from the Housing Commission on that? Nope.
Peter Nichols, resident, chair of the Housing Commission this year. My personal feeling is that the Shoreland Overland District needs more protection, primarily because of the environmental issues. We don't really have our arms around this cyanobacteria problem. I know we're doing a lot of good research on it. We have a sense that it's phosphorus and nitrogen, and some of it's on the lake beds and could be stirred up by wake boats, and we're really just getting our arms around it. In the meantime, I think to the point of short-term rentals, since we cannot really do that, protect these detached ADUs from being used for short-term rentals, and to Steve's point, waterfront property might be a place where you'd see more of that. I would be in favor of selectively saying detached in the Shoreland Overland District should be no more than 750 square feet. That's not a Housing Commission position, that's just my own thought.
Yeah, but the difference being not all detached 750, just 750 in the shoreland.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah. I would just add anecdotally, my wife and I are thinking about how we would someday end up in a smaller home, not in the near future, and I was thinking about, gee, 1,000 square feet would, maybe 1,200 square feet we could do, but I couldn't envision 750 square feet. That's just one story, but so I think for detached to be usable and the purposes that we've been envisioning, 1,000 square feet would be better. away from the shoreland district.
Right. So others, anyone else want to opine? Emily, any thoughts?
I was just going to say that my classroom in the new middle school was 900 square feet. And when I tried to think of 750 square feet, that's a little tight. Yeah.
As far as usage goes, let's see. So in state law, the definition for detached is, so we can sort of default, because before this provision potentially being divided between attached and detached, we hadn't used the term detached unit yet, so we didn't have a purpose to define it. But the state law definition means a unit that is neither within nor physically connected to the principal dwelling unit, nor completely contained within a pre-existing detached structure. Yeah, because so attached unit means a unit that is within or physically connected to the principal dwelling unit or completely contained within a pre-existing detached structure. So,
Can you come up, Steve? Sorry.
but so
just
you
we
want
get it.
even attached accessory dwelling units in the shoreland overlay to be,
No, what my language suggests that it's detached based on what we've always understood, which is an ADU that is not within or physically connected to the principal dwelling unit. That leaves out the detached attached, which is a ADU that's put into a pre-existing building. That's in the statutory definition. We don't have to use the word attached or detached if we use the language, an ADU that is not within or physically connected to the principal dwelling unit.
just playing devil's advocate here, if 1,000 square foot accessory structure exists today within the shoreland as a garage, as a whatever, because that's how the state law is trying to make that determination between the attached, and it's sort of counting those under the attached because they already exist, right? So what is the material benefit of not allowing a quarter of that existing impervious area to be utilized for the ADU?
So two benefits. One is there's an ambiguity. I build my garage this year, and next year I'll come in for the ADU, previously existing building. So not that our waterfront landowners would do anything devious, but there's that issue. Separately, the usage would be more intense, people flushing the toilets and so on in 1,000 square feet than they would be in 750 square feet. And so that's the concept.
Okay.
I don't want to leave out that the proposal that I threw out had two aspects. The other was the manufactured housing at 750 square feet. And just to,
I just want to make sure I get this. Here's your email. I'm questioning a little bit the ability to restrict the manufactured home ADUs as a different type of ADU. Is there a spot in the RSA that gives us that power to treat them differently?
well, the RSA requires that manufactured homes be allowed in every district. The ADU requirement is that we need to allow at least 750 square feet, which we would. And so, in my view, it'd be possible to restrict manufactured homes beyond that. Now, there was a proposal in the legislature last time that said that restrictions on manufactured housing had to be reasonable, but I would even argue this is reasonable in that it meets the minimum required by the statute.
What are people's thoughts on?
Any thoughts from the board on that?
And Steve, you said the minimum square footage required, but I assumed you meant the maximum in your email.
The statutory requirement is all detached ADUs, however you want to describe them, have to be allowed at least at 750 square feet in
Right.
every residential zone. And so my proposal is that we allow 750, but not more.
Okay,
for the
so
two categories. So
Yep.
Yeah,
did
that's
I
what he meant.
miswrite that? Then
I think you wrote minimum, but I think you meant maximum, but
I
we,
did, yes.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, that's good.
maybe we're looking at two different.
I'm looking at the email. I thought.
Yeah, but he just said.
No, I think it's 3 I, C-V-I-I.
Maximum square footage of a Does that work, Steve? For this isn't the manufactured home part, but as far as the
750 for the shoreland.
so the maximum square footage of an ADU that is detached from the principal dwelling unit in the shoreland overlay district shall not exceed 750 square feet of living space.
I wouldn't use the word detached. It's confusing because
Because
of
of
the
what the
definition.
legislature
I would
did.
use the terms that I proposed, that an ADU that is not within or physically connected to the principal dwelling unit. That is not within or physically connected to the principal dwelling unit. Connected to the principal dwelling unit. Dwelling unit capitalized. Okay, that works on that point, yeah.
I think you make a good point, Steve, about the likelihood of those ones being more a short-term issue than a short-term rental issue than
Yeah.
other parts in town, right?
Although, in agreement with Charlene Baxter, though, it's just, my main concern is just that our lakes are pretty precious, and I think this is.
And they're
We
struggling
don't need
already.
to do more in that area.
Right, and they're struggling already, and I think that there's going to be more pressure on that. I'm generally, myself, in favor of using detached in the parlance we've been saying it elsewhere at 1,000, because I think like Emily makes a good point, and other people, I think 750 is pretty tiny. I've had some pretty tiny apartments in my life, and it's not something I want to go back to, but I think 1,000 seems to be reasonable. It's also less than what was it 1,250 2 years ago, right?
1250 or 15. Yep.
Proposed was 1,250, so
Yeah.
we've come down from that, but I feel like elsewhere that 1,000 seems, and kind of to the point Peter made as well.
Yeah, and I'm not proposing for the
Right.
rest outside of Shoreland Overlay District.
Yeah.
Except with respect to the manufactured homes, which I realize is a sensitive issue. It makes us, there is a little NIMBYism. And you might question whether anybody's going to put in a manufactured home. But if somebody does, your neighbor is not going to be happy.
Does anyone know the standard dimensions of a manufactured home? I mean, if they're, I assume 10, 12 feet wide for a single wide?
Peter, do you know?
A single wide, a double wide is close to a minimum of 1,000. So that this is essentially, if you do much less than 1,000, you're going to be limited to single wide. According to AI, I'm no expert on this, but I looked it up. I asked the question.
Do you happen to know, Peter?
I don't know. It sounds like Adam's guidance is spot on. I did a quick calculation also to understand what 750 square feet meant. If somebody had a detached garage today, if a car is 8 feet wide and you want 2 feet on either side for swinging a door, if you're going to build a garage, that means you've got 12 feet of width per car. If you have 2 cars, that's 24 feet wide. That depth to meet 750 square feet is 32 feet deep. So if you had a garage that was 2 bays, 12 feet by 12 feet, and you had that square footage above on the second floor, it would be 750 square feet. So that's just a reference to what a garage would be like if it were 2 cars and it were going to be converted.
I had done some searching and seen some of the prefab ADUs that are pretty nice looking. Some of those are larger than 750, which was part of my thinking too, but the ones I saw mostly were under 1,000. So it felt like it's kind of in that range of 800, 900, something.
And those are prefabbed or manufactured home?
I know, I have to think about the actual definition. I'm using it in the sort of common parlance, but these are manufactured, I guess they would be, right? Because they show up on site. Is that right? They're assembled on site, yeah.
So that's, if they're assembled on
Assembled,
site, then
then
they're
that's
pre-site
prefab.
built.
Right. But if they're show up whole thing, like you mentioned before, and you're talking about the chassis and the whole thing, and they show up and they're plunked in place, then that is manufactured?
Right, and they have to be greater than 320 square feet by definition, and in this, less than 750. So they would be in that.
For the shoreland, but for anything, you're saying?
This is saying period,
Anywhere,
right?
right,
Yep.
yeah, right.
Is manufactured homes, is that referenced in the content of this? I've read several things, so I'm not sure it's here.
It's a defined term in the zoning ordinance.
Got it, okay.
Yep. We always, after tonight, the next step is that these all go to town council to review so that we have feedback by the public hearing. I'll say this is the one line that I'll sort of point their attention to just to make sure we have the power, since it's not sort of explicitly stated in the RSA. But I certainly appreciate Steve's rationalization there. But we'll just.
Are there any, just before we breeze through that too quickly, are there any other thoughts? Because I heard some murmuring from which I appreciate from the Housing Commission folks, like in terms of the manufactured part, are folks, so you guys know a lot about this, so does that seem like a reasonable limitation? to you, 750 versus 1,000? I don't know, what, folks on the board, anybody else?
I'm hearing yes.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right, I personally worry a little bit for manufacture that may be a little bit small, but I'm not going to be obviously I'm not going to hold up the works, that's just one opinion, so if others are comfortable with it, then that's fine.
All right, so the next one, this was more or less a consolidation. We didn't really need 2 lines since we eliminated the second. So it's that off-street parking shall be provided, garage spaces meet this requirement, just sort of lifted that up and made it a clean sentence. This was not a change for, and then the last one, an ADU may not occupy rented or leased land, we had added after the last one. And then the last one being, in response to Rich's comment, multifamily uses may not have an accessory dwelling unit. So if you're a townhome or any other, 3-unit condo or whatever your setup may be.
Please, yep.
That line about multifamily uses is straight out of the statute. It's a permitted restriction, and I think it helps with the voters who 2 years ago weren't happy with detached, so you're doing the minimum. But could I point out one thing, though? One of my comments we kind of glossed over. I had suggested up in section E2 in the whole that we add a restriction that I'll just read to you. A rental, lease, or similar arrangement that provides for occupancy of an ADU or the principal dwelling unit and precludes the owner's full discretion to change or reset a rental or similar payment amount for a period of longer than 5 years shall constitute a conveyance. This is a long-term lease that's essentially transferring ownership. I made up 5 years.
Is that, sorry, Steve, might have missed that in your email. Is that in the email itself, or is that in the attachment?
It's in insert 1A in the attachment.
I'm just looking, sorry.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but the email mentioned it. too,
Insert
I
1A,
think.
I see that. And then,
Was there something on
see.
the bottom of the?
Yeah, there's that.
Oh,
I got
did
it.
Not print, or? Oh,
I forgot, that was further down, I forgot about that.
sorry about that.
No problem.
That also explains where the language was you were referencing that I was
Oh.
like, I'm not seeing this, Steve, but okay.
Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Sorry, Steve, so can you just walk through that one more time, because I was
Yeah, it's,
searching.
in short, it says that if you sign a lease that through either has a term of more than 5 years or has automatic renewals that doesn't let the landlord have discretion to change the cost, you have a very long-term lease arrangement. And that is in essence a conveyance. Now, maybe 5 years is too short, but 99 years would be awfully long. And so, ADUs are supposed to be rentals or mother-in-laws and not conveyed separately, not turned into a condominium. We have language like that already, and I was trying to just close a loophole.
So so if we said because you said 5 was somewhat arbitrary and maybe too short, if we said, I don't know, 7 years, 10 years, something like that, does that
Yeah,
get at what you're trying to do?
it does
which is-
get at what I'm,
Okay.
because
I do worry from an administrative standpoint, it is something that will be completely lost in the town office, that there is it sort of creates a false security in the zoning ordinance where then we're going to have leases we have to track for however many years, and if staffing changes over a certain time period, we don't necessarily have a built-in system that's going to say whoever is there in 7 years or is asking for copies of the leases every year. They're not recorded at the registry, so there's not an automatic way for us to obtain people's leases. That I do have reservations about how practical it is from our standpoint of having to actually administer it.
well, you have my sympathy on that, but you also have about 3 dozen other things in this ordinance and others that are very hard to administer. I think what I'm trying to get at here is that if someone were to attempt to get financing to create a conveyance with a 99-year lease or a 50-year lease or a 30-year lease, they're not going to be able to do it if it violates the statute, whether Adam Rickard knows about it or not. So it's, as I say, I'm trying to close a loophole. If it seems like too much, I can live without it. We've lived this long without it.
Can I ask on? Oh, go ahead.
I appreciate that. I'm not sure that financial institutions read our zoning ordinance, to be honest. Based on the questions that we sometimes get asked by closing agents, I don't think that a lot of them do a lot of research in that regard. That I'm not sure that would catch it either.
Can I ask, just from an enforcement standpoint, though, after I hear your point about it's an administrative headache or just an administrative, if not impossibility.
It's not so much about the headache. It's about, I worry it creates another false sense of control that.
Fair. But I guess a lot of times, though, when people come to you, it's because they believe some issue is being unenforced or is there's some violation of it. If this were on the books, would an administrator be able to say, if it's say that we pick 7 years, would they be able to find out like, oh, here, you've got 10 years worth of leases here, even if we didn't have them as a town? Would there be some sort of like retroactive power that you would have to say, well, that's in violation of the, like you've been leasing, or your lease conveyed this for 20 years, so you could get some sort of financing for it. That's not allowed here. You know what I mean? Like, I know what you're saying about the enforcement, but
Yeah. I don't know how obviously I am not a real estate attorney, but how are life estates looked at as far as the length and term? I mean, people can retain rights to an ADU that you sell your house to your kid, but you retain a really undefined lease with right to use the ADU, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, 25 years. Or, I don't know, do you have a thought on that?
No, I'm
You're
not
not
a dirt
seeing-
lawyer, unfortunately. Maybe Bob Bowers does, I don't know.
did you say you had lots of thoughts, Bob? Did I hear that?
But I think he's,
Can you come up though, Mike, so we can hear it? I'm sorry. Just make sure it gets recorded. Thank you.
I don't have a vested interest one way or the other, but when I've gone through and looked at the zoning and planning board matters, there are all kinds of things, it seems to me, and I may be wrong, that present enforceability issues. And if you're going to start making decisions based upon that concept, you may want to have to revisit the entire plan you have. Otherwise, you might want to be making your decisions not on whether administratively you can enforce it, because in 10 years you may have a software program that allows you to do it, but whether it makes sense in terms of what you're trying to accomplish, which in a great, as I understand this, a great effort to increase the availability of housing of some sort in various ways for different groups. And you can get too bogged down sometimes in the enforceability question. It may be something you just need to live with. I would rather see you making decisions based upon the theory of what you think is the right thing for the town, rather than on whether you have to have a enforcement officer running around in a truck knocking on doors all the time, because you're going to have that anyway. ADUs is an example. From my understanding of past conversations, there are places out there that are functioning as ADUs that have not been approved. Maybe that's not true anymore, but it was. So if you're not going to have enforceability on everything, then it may not be a criteria you want to prevent you from doing what you may consider to be the right thing. I don't know whether it's the right thing. I'm just saying that
Yep.
philosophically, that's how I would approach it. Does that
Yep.
make sense?
It does. I can see that. I can also see if we think we have too many things that are unenforceable, not wanting to add to the list, but I hear your point completely. Yep. I don't know, do others on the board have thoughts on the time limitation?
You know, I think if we make this too complicated or add too many words to these warrant articles, zoning changes, I think people will just throw up their hands and say, no, I'm not going to vote for this. So I think the simpler we can make it, the better, just from the public's understanding of what is trying to be done.
Yeah, sorry, Emily.
Most leases are written on an annual basis and are in a renewal type thing. Wouldn't it be easier just to start there and hope that they are renewed each year and going forward, everything's okay? Or it seems to me that we're gonna get ourselves into a sort of a screwy situation here.
We just never see anybody's leases. There's not a process in which we collect those or that they're registered. So I can't answer honestly. I don't know for the ADUs that we have now. I don't know how many of them even have formal leases or if they're on month to month or what that is. It's not like with a deed where there's something recorded. We have the ability to access that publicly like everybody else. So if we had a neighbor say, hey, I heard so-and-so has a 99-year lease, and we call them and say, hey, we need to see your lease. If it's a private document between the two of them that's not recorded anywhere, I guess they can just say, I don't have a lease. And I don't know what we would do at that point. I mean, I guess if we still suspected that, we'd have to convince a judge for a search warrant. I don't know. I don't know exactly how that would go, but
And I hear the point about not making things more complicated, but I also think about trying to sell this as well. And I guess I just wonder, what would be the thing you brought up about the notion of somebody like a right to live, or whatever that's called, when you can stay in your
life tenancy.
life tenant, yeah. So that would be one thing that I would worry about tripping up inadvertently with this, but I understand Steve's point about not wanting to have, the idea in theory is that this is the housing that, to some degree, and maybe I'm thinking of it wrong, but that has turnover, And
Steve, have
maybe
you
not.
thought of any alternative ways that accomplish a similar goal without getting to the point of providing leases, or I don't know.
Well, the issue is there's not supposed to be a conveyance of ownership. And so what I was thinking about is long-term leases are a version of a conveyance, and that's what my language tries to say. If you don't say it, we don't know what's a conveyance. There's language saying that creating a condominium arrangement is a conveyance, and you make a good point, Adam. If something is a conveyance, if you go to the Register of Deeds and you see something there, and that would include, I think, my example of a 99-year lease, but it wouldn't include the 98-year lease. That's where the line is drawn, and it seemed like it was kind of too far.
And so 99-year leases are recorded at
I
the
believe so, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not 100% positive. They are in some states. We heard that from a knowledgeable person at our meeting last Friday. But, so it's just, the whole problem, and I think it'll come up in the long run. If, right now we're thinking about ADUs as somebody creates one either to rent or for mom to live in, or an immediate use. But what happens down the road when that person moves out and someone else buys the house? We have subsequent owners, life estate situation you mentioned. It gets complicated, and maybe this doesn't help much. I don't know.
What if so here, to say, to the fullest extent permitted by law, there shall be no conveyance, comma, included but not limited to 99-year leases? Or do you think that doesn't really?
Well, it's a 98-year
It's
lease.
too long for.
Yeah, that's my problem, is it's really too long. But what I was trying to capture too is, okay, it's a 1-year lease, but you have a right to renew and at no increased cost or at a 2% increase. That's something that locks the owner into an economic arrangement that goes on forever or for a very long time.
So that would effectively be a conveyance as well, you're saying?
I'm
Yeah.
saying yes.
Yeah, okay.
Certainly.
But that's even harder though, right? Unless you, to try to forestall that, because you're saying at that point you would have to put a cap, like an actual, this may not extend beyond 10 years or something like that?
Yeah, you need a time cap, and
Right.
what I wrote into my proposal, which may not be brilliant even if I think so, is whether the owner, landlord has some right to reset the economic arrangement entirely, and it could be, 1% a year every year, and then the landlord can't raise that. He's locked in forever, which is a conveyance.
But that would be the landlord or the owner would do that. I mean, that would be
Yeah.
their own foolishness in that case, right? For doing that.
Or to create a conveyance situation, but tiptoe around it.
Gotcha, okay. So you believe that if we said to the fullest extent permitted by law, there shall be no conveyance of an ADU separate from the,
No, that's already in the statute.
right, but I'm saying that if we added a clause to say that, like what Adam was just suggesting around, but making it time-bound somehow?
Somehow, yeah, that calling it a lease, but having it go forever as an economic arrangement.
Right.
As a conveyance.
No, and I get that, and I get what you're saying, I guess. Yeah, trying to think how to do that.
Sorry to make it difficult.
Nope, that's why we're here.
What do you think the minimum term is that it, I mean, 10 years?
I think that's whatever we do, we're going to want to run that by town council to make sure that we're not inadvertently tripping up like the life leases and all that stuff.
Oh boy, sorry.
I'm inclined to say longer than 5 years, but I hear your point. I know you said that was arbitrary, I mean, more or less, so, but I don't know what folks think about putting in B4, I guess that'd be IV. But I also heard a point from 2 people on the board that they are worried about complicating things, and I completely hear that point. I just also think that from a selling a standpoint too, if we say that there are guardrails. Did you want to say something, Charlene?
I think 5 years is probably not long enough.
But you're okay with some sort of time?
I think we should,
Okay.
yeah.
Other folks? Sorry, Janet, you've weighed in saying don't gum up the works too much.
Yeah, I just think.
Don't forget your mic.
I realize I don't have the maybe mental capability that Steve does to figure these things out. But the average person, I think, may get in that voting booth and look at this and go, oh my God, you know, what are they trying to do here? And a lot of people have spent a lot of time on this stuff, and you hope that it will pass, but if it becomes too dense, I don't think it will pass. That's just my opinion.
And I hear that. I guess I wonder, though, too, so much of what I think sank us last time was kind of word of mouth about the stuff rather than people poring over the text itself. So it feels like if there were people who are saying there are X, Y, and Z guardrails or safeguards or what have you that are, you know, speed bumps for this, then that feels like maybe, because it's already a lot of text, it's already a lot of redlining, you know, and I don't know if this will be the straw that breaks the camel's back, but I hear your point. Clearly, the less of tinkering we can do, the better, I think, broadly, but I don't know. Steve, did you want to?
I just want to mention that the possibility of a conveyance through a lease was mentioned in one of the shopper ads that opposed detached ADUs the last time. So
Right.
It cuts both ways. This, as you point out, Tim, this is a restriction trying to make the statute for detached ADUs do what it's supposed to do and not create just more separately owned houses. That's not to say I understand Janet's point. It's true. Your eyes do glaze over, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you say, what are these guys doing? And so maybe it's hard to understand.
No, I hear that. Peter?
Maybe this isn't a great idea, but if we're worried about trying to create a definition for what is a long-term lease and we don't really know, maybe we shouldn't define it by number of years. We just say it can't be a conveyance by deed or lease. And when this becomes a problem, it will be determined whether the lease is long enough to be considered a conveyance. Is that helpful?
It's interesting. So essentially, yeah, Peter.
So as a matter of drafting, the easiest thing would have been to find a definition of conveyance in zoning statutes or regs. Couldn't find anything. I checked with artificial intelligence, I'm sorry to say, and it was not helpful either. There's just, for New Hampshire, it wasn't pointing me to anything that I could find that, because it would be great to say a conveyance is this, and there's some learning and thought that had gone into it. Couldn't find it.
Yeah, because my only concern, my only real hesitation on this is not. I hear Janet's point, but I feel like again, there's already so much tinkering that this won't be the thing that sinks us. But my only concern is conflicting with the whatever, I can't remember what it's called, the right of survivorship and all that sort of stuff. I worry about that because that does feel like a thing that would be in keeping with an ADU. That's the only thing that's the primary concern that I have, that I don't want to inadvertently run afoul of that. But if there was a way to do what Peter said and make it conveyance, and then we have to just, that a lease itself should not be a conveyance.
Bob, can you help us understand life tenancy or a little bit better? If there's a way we can build in a safeguard?
I actually, without sitting down and trying to go through it and talking with Steve, I probably could not.
Okay.
My first reaction when Janet said people will see this as complicated, it's already complicated. I mean, I sat down with some background in this and took me a while to sort of work through it. And as I started listening to this, I couldn't figure out what it was we were trying to protect here. I just couldn't follow it. Why? The closest I can come is something Peter may have suggested, is a reference to, in keeping with the purposes of an ADU, we will not allow something. I don't know whether you will or not, but I think if you start getting into the lease language, you are more likely to get somebody to start arguing about what that means in public and have an undercut what you're trying to do. Because it's just, if I listen to this conversation and what he said, and I've got background in it, and I'm swirling around on this, I think you could have a real complication of doing that. And my second thought was, what's the identified problem? Do you have one person every 10 years that gets away with this? What is the problem? Is it an LLC, which I don't know what your language is going to be on that, but is it that somebody's going to come in and buy up 10 houses and turn them into long-term leases. I don't know what the problem is. So part of it ought to be before you ask the public to approve something, have a clear understanding in your own mind what the problem is, how bad the problem is, and understand that human beings are such that people are going to get away with something you didn't want them to get away with. So I would sort of back off on this, I think. I'm just having trouble following it. My thought.
Thanks, Bob.
No answer.
Thanks.
Semicolons. Much easier.
I'm going to weigh in. You guys have spent way too long on this tonight. And as Bob said, I appreciate what Steve's trying to do. What Bob said is true. We don't know what we're trying to lasso. And I will say, when you register to vote and you are on a lease, the town clerk's office sees the lease. It's not it's a document you have to prove that you're a resident of the town. To see a lease that's longer than a year is very unique. I'm just saying, when you register to vote.
Can someone just, not that this really has any bearing, but can someone register to vote without a lease by proving residency in another manner, or no?
Their deeds, I mean, they have
Like
to
a
show.
utility bill or, okay. So a lease is not a requirement there if they have the alternative.
It has to have the actual structure's address on it.
Right.
With the correct address.
Okay.
Like,
But if you were renting without a lease, you could just show your Eversource bill or whatever.
yes,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
So what's your pleasure? Delete it or leave it?
It doesn't bother me that much. I just think that it would be longer than 5 years because I don't think it's that big of a deal. But I hear the point. But I would love to be able to move on, obviously. But I don't know what other folks think too. If they would rather not have it, what do you think, Adam?
I was going to say maybe talk to our local legislative delegation about defining conveyance on the state level. Because, and I say that sort of in jest, but also kind of seriously, because if this is something that they have baked into the RSA to avoid situations like this so that it's not an ADU on Pleasant Lake or Lake Sunapee or Squam or any other lake in the state that is all of a sudden being leased for 60 years as essentially a condominium, I don't think they want that in any, that's not their intention either. So, they've passed away, but yes, now it's over. But, right, yes. And so I think there's probably a problem there that's larger than us, that perhaps that is something to approach. I don't know if that's too late for this legislative season, but that
Yeah.
may be.
I mean, I liked Peter's idea of just conveyance and then sort of not having to define it, honestly, but I know that that seems like another thing. Is there any way that we could, what's the minimum viable product here that we could get through? So Janet, you'd be in favor of skipping it, right?
I would.
Yep. Emily? Keep or skip? Would you really like to keep the language of some restriction here that we're talking about, or would you like to take it out?
I'm not happy with either one, but anyway.
Okay. And Charlene, what's your, you, if I heard you right before, you were thinking you would like to have some restriction? Okay. Well, that's good. Dead even. I don't feel strongly one way or the other. Do you have any thoughts, Adam? Any suggestions on how to move forward?
Not really. I see the potential problem. I don't know. It feels like an imperfect solution, and maybe town council has, whether or not something is in there that goes forward to the public hearing tonight, that doesn't mean that I can't pose it to town council, and they might have a way of wrapping it in. We'd have to have a second public hearing in January if we want to add a material thing to it, but Right. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You could leave it in and show it to them, and they can say no, or you could take it out, say to them, this is something that came up that if you have a more perfect solution,
Yeah.
perhaps
I'd be in favor of that.
suggest that, and then at the public hearing in January, you could debate whether or not that's something you want to add in. If you choose that you don't want to add it in, you could be done that night. If you choose you want to, you could continue.
So if we left it in, we could strike it and without, but I would like to have town council weigh in one way or the other, right? But it's still a material change either way, right?
Right. I'd be more apt to take it out and ask them for feedback on if it were to be
Okay.
in, because then
All right.
it's not in there and you're not guaranteed to.
Let's do that.
Okay.
if
Yeah,
that works.
that's what I heard you say more positively. Adam, I agree with that.
Okay, let's do it.
Let me just cut this while I have it actually written.
Thanks all for bearing with us. Just got shorter, Janet.
So, just to keep Janet smiling, in the interest of brevity, I think we have a duplication now, not related to what you just discussed, but E2, where you now have added an ADU, it's hard for me to read, may not occupy rented or leased land, you also have as E12, and I'm not sure we needed them both.
Thank you.
It's under E2 and E12. Pick one.
Thank you.
Nice, thank you. Even shorter. Tide is changing, Janet.
So Steve, you had thoughts on, and I don't think I did put this one in there, the attached ADUs shall have either an independent means of ingress and egress, or ingress and egress through a common space shared with the principal dwelling unit? Is that?
Yeah, it's a limitation in the statutory requirement, and so I wasn't focused on brevity in particular. I was focused on making the case that the voters didn't want detached ADUs 2 years ago. We have to have them, but we are not going any farther in most respects than we need to. And so I'm not sure whether this is much of a restriction, so if you decide that brevity might get more votes, you can go that way too. It's just, my theme was, if the statute said you have to do something.
I missed that before too, Steve. I'm sorry that you sent that. I did see the insert, but I must have read that too quickly. Can you explain what you think that means? What 8 means?
Yeah, I think it's actually, let me,
Things have filtered in, so sort of forget the numbering.
Sorry,
associated
but on
with
your
it.
initial attachment.
Yep. Just hold one moment.
yeah. So what do I think that means? Well, actually, I haven't thought a great deal about it. It's saying that you've got to have an opening into the attached ADU that's either separate from or through a common space. I'm trying to think of what the third.
What would be the alternative? Because isn't that both? That's what I was confusing about.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sorry. So previously with attached ADUs, we've required that they don't have to have a door that goes directly from one unit finished space into the other unit finished space, but you need to be able to go from one to the other without going outside, more or less. Is the RSA updated that to say you can essentially have an attached ADU that has its own separate entrance where there is no going through a garage to get to your staircase, and that's what this is simply clarifying to a point to say you can have this or you can have this.
Okay. and-
Versus previously you could only have this.
Right,
Thanks for thinking about that, because I think you could take that out, then it doesn't,
Okay.
it's not a restriction, and therefore it doesn't help to say we're doing the minimum, because there's nothing, it covers the unit.
But it doesn't preclude us from allowing someone to have an independent, separate entrance, which I think is.
No, that's now
that
baked
what-
Yeah, it's saying
Right,
that
that's what we
that's
wanted,
as
right.
of right.
Exactly, yeah.
So, sorry about that.
Nope, no worries. Thank you.
All right. Steve, did we miss anything else? I think that's the last one on the list. Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Bob, any semicolons, commas? No? Good, all right.
There's no shame in grammar, Bob. I'm with you. That's right.
Oop, I found a period, Bob. All right. So then we'd be, if there's
Yeah.
no other changes, we'd
We
be
would need a
looking
motion.
for a motion to move this to January 13th, 6:30, Whipple Hall.
Who would like to make that motion? So Janet, you said so moved?
Yep.
Can I get a second? Emily, thank you. All in favor? Aye. All right, no opposed, no abstaining? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next up, Cottage Court. Hopefully everyone, we had a tremendous issue with getting this PDF to actually project on the website. It took Vicky saving this in 10 different ways today. So Bob, thank you for, first of all, pointing that out, that it wasn't up there, and I'm not sure exactly what the PDF corruption was. It's on there now. If you need a hard copy, they're on the stage. But this is obviously a long one. I think we've all been through it a lot. I don't know that we have to go through and every single section of it is new. So there's not any, there are of course things that we have changed along the way, but I'm not sure it pays to go through a
This
synopsis.
feels like this feels like the one we spent the most time on and is probably the most polished, I would say. Well, with ADUs there's a lot of time too, but
So I left things highlighted that were the things we talked about most recently, simply for those of you who have been in the trenches to be able to sort of direct your attention on those things in this round. But for the posting, the highlighted things will be removed because they
'Cause it's
have no
on it.
bearing after
Yep.
tonight.
are there comments from the board in terms of, again, as Adam said, this is all new stuff, but are there questions on these changes, even the highlights or even beyond?
So then we'd be looking
Yeah.
for a
Well,
motion.
why don't we just,
yeah.
public, sorry.
yeah, sure.
Just any comments from the public on cottage courts? Questions, concerns? Okay. Yeah, so we're speeding up quite a bit from the last one. I guess I'd be looking for, to everyone's delight, I'd be looking for a motion to move this to public hearing on January 13th.
So moved.
Janet and Emily seconded, once again. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Do definition of family.
Definition of family, which I know we've also batted around a lot, obviously, that we now no longer have the ability to define families based on actual familial relationships as we all understand them. So that complicates limiting to the number of individuals when that means a family of 7 or 9 or whatever number you'd like to pick, or a multi-generational situation would be excluded. So as we left it last, we eliminated the majority of it and cut it down to the ability of, or to the limited ability that we have.
Yeah, essentially recognizing what we just have a limited ability. Are there any questions about the latest iteration from last week? From the public, any questions on family? All right, well, we would just need a motion to move this to public hearing on the 13th.
So move.
So Charlene, was that who made the motion? Okay, and then Emily seconded, thank you. Thanks, Emily. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstaining? Okay, thank you.
One thing I want to say, well, and I should have probably done this last Friday when we had a lot more of the Housing Commission members and Planning Board members there, but, Peter, Tim, and I have discussed how helpful, this model of the Housing Commission really carrying the torch of the early development of these modifications and sort of bringing them to you guys when you have time in this time of year when there's not a lot of development applications usually in this stretch. Summer, you're in the trenches. It's a lot harder for you to jump in early on. This model is now in our 5th year, I think, of proposed changes starting with the Housing Commission. I find this extremely helpful. I think that you all get a lot done. It brings a lot, far greater voice to the table. There's a lot different, many more opinions, and just very appreciative of the time that the Housing Commission put in.
Yeah.
And,
We wouldn't be here without it. I mean, there's no question.
I'm not familiar with another town in New Hampshire that uses their housing commission in this model, and I think it's something that probably should be looked at wider. Peter and I have talked about like how do we sort of share, what we feel are successes, even if the votes have not always been successful. The process of sort of starting at the housing commission and coming along through the planning board has been successful. So.
Of course, now they're going to want to move to other towns where they don't have to do this much work, so that's a problem. Don't do that. No, yeah, we would not be here without that. So immense and ongoing appreciation for all your hard work and having multiple people, like you said, take passes at this and take swings at it and have people think at it from different viewpoints is invaluable. So appreciate that. Appreciate Steve, everybody, Rich, all the people who have contributed. Anything else?
I think that's really it. No more Friday morning 7:30 meetings.
Yep.
This is your last meeting of 2025. Your next meeting will be January 13th of 26.
Yeah. Which is also wild. As much time as we've spent together lately, it feels like we're a family.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
So what time's Christmas dinner?
Exactly.
Is that what's coming
Right.
next?
All right. Well, thank you all. I appreciate all the hard work from everybody here and wish everybody a happy, healthy holiday and a prosperous new year. Can you get a motion to adjourn? I had Charlene, Emily seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you all.
And a designation of Emily Campbell as MVP of tonight's
Yeah, exactly.
meeting.
Thank you so much for coming out. And thanks, Adam, for shepherding us through all this.